Hey class, welcome back to Introduction to Ethics. I hope you're all doing well today. In today's lesson, we're going to begin our study with session number 1, Why Morality Matters. And this is a general look at morality, but we are going to get into some definitions and terms, and it gets kind of technical, so you want to make sure you take good notes and follow along with the PowerPoint. Because it does get kind of technical, especially towards the end of the PowerPoint. So this session is Why Morality Matters. Stay tuned for the PowerPoint. Okay, class, we're now going to have the PowerPoint portion of our lesson here today. This is session number 1, and we're going to be looking at chapter 1, Why Morality Matters, from our book, Moral Choices. Again, we definitely use this book in the class, so make sure you have it handy. But most things are going to be from the PowerPoints for the exam. So and sometimes I've highlighted things in yellow for you to bring special attention to those. But we're going to begin today with why morality matters. Well, the reason it matters is because we are moral beings. Everyone on the planet is a moral being. Morality has been built into our very composition of the universe and humans. God has created humans in such a way that it is inherent in our nature to sense a difference between what is right and wrong. And then also God has written this law on our hearts. So we have this natural sense. God has built it into us that there is something right and that there is something wrong. We are moral creatures because of this. And again, it's written on our heart. You don't have to go very far into a church nursery where some toddlers are playing and a little boy walks up to another boy and takes the truck away from him and runs away. Well, the boy that lost the truck begins to cry because there is a wrong against him, and he knows that it was wrong, so he starts crying. That's his response. And then the other boy runs away with the truck because he wants to get away with stealing the truck from the little boy that was playing with it. So we see just in the very early interaction of humans, and let's say the toddler stage, we know that there is right and wrong going on. In Romans 2, verses 12 to 16, the Word of God says this: "For as many as have sinned without law will also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in the law will be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God, but the doers of the law will be justified." Verse 14, "For when Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do the things in the law, these, although not having the law, are a law to themselves, who show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and between themselves their thoughts accusing or else excusing them, in the day when God will judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel." So we see there that the Word of God says all of this is written on our heart, that we know that there is a right and a wrong. So we are moral beings. We are moral creatures because we have been created by a moral God. Sin has complicated matters, but sin has not done away with morality. We do know what is right and wrong because it is a very part of our very fabric of creation. Morality is also an integral part of what it means to be human. Like I said, we are moral beings. Therefore, questions about morality cannot be thought of as questions simply about what is right and wrong. So it's not just like trying to get to the answer of what is right and wrong, and that's it. Instead, it's a question about what it means to be human. We're moral beings, and it is integral for us. It is who we are making these decisions. We ask these questions because being moral often requires self-sacrifice on the part of the individual. Continuing on, we are moral beings, but we are not isolated. We are moral beings in community. Humans are relational beings. We do not live in isolation, but we live in community. Morality is complicated, and it is on display basically in relationship. So we definitely see morality come into play in community, in the relations between people. We see that every day. We can hurt others, we can be nice to others, we can make decisions that affect others. There's definitely relationship going on. First and foremost, humans have a relationship with God. So we're coming from a biblical standpoint here, a biblical worldview. And so definitely we're talking about Christians. Christians have a relationship with God. So we every day we are communing with God, or we should be anyway. We are communing with God. So we have a relationship with God, but also we have a relationship to other human beings. And that is definitely going to be on play here. This two-sided relationship, our relationship with God and relationship with human beings, is going to be played out in morality and in the ethical dilemmas, especially how it affects other people and how it affects the Christian, because we're coming from a biblical worldview and we're submitting under God's headship in making these ethical decisions that we have to make. Romans 13:8-10 says this: "Owe no one anything except to love one another, for he who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet, and if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Verse 10, "Love does no harm to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law." So we definitely are going to be seeing the relationship being played out between humans in this morality in the community with other people. No person truly desires to live in a community void of morality, because for a society to flourish, there must be moral agreement. And we live in a time today where people are just doing whatever they want, and it's just insane what you think is going on in our culture. But for a community to really flourish, you have to have moral agreement. You cannot have moral disagreement going on and a community flourishing. And that's why we have such problem today. We have such dissension and such division between people today, is because we have left moral agreement of what is right and what is wrong. People are now making up what is right and what is wrong, and making wrongs right and making rights wrong. And so we have moral disagreement going on. That's why we have such dissension in our community. But a community that's divided is not going to flourish, but yet people want to live in a community that flourishes. Most ethical dilemmas require putting the interests of another before our own, requiring a sort of thinking that is willing to put the benefits of others over the self for the sake of humanity and God. So just in a nutshell, if we're going to be loving other people, it's going to be a sacrificial love. We'll be putting other people before ourselves when it comes to, let's say, making a decision. Will it hurt somebody else or help somebody else? But of course, we always have this umbrella over us that we submit to God. So when it comes to an ethical dilemma, we will never put our interests or man's interests above God. We must approach the ethical dilemma with a biblical worldview and seeing what God has to say about the ethical dilemma and coming from that angle. Okay, so let's talk about morality and ethics. All humans make moral assessment on a regular basis, yet due to sin, grasping and applying moral standards is different. We do this every day. We may do it on a regular basis, but yet we are sinners. And so sometimes applying a moral standard is difficult. Every aspect of human life is at its core a moral project, because morality is concerned with how things ought to be. Jesus articulated a set moral standard beyond "thou shalt not" to the things, hidden things of the heart. So it's easy sometimes to just say, well, there's a bunch of rules. If we just follow them, then we'll all be moral. But there are hidden things of the heart. So basically what that means is the law is a minimum requirement, and really the law cannot change the heart. The law is just a rule. It doesn't change the heart. It can dictate behavior, but that doesn't necessarily mean a change of heart. It just means someone is following a rule. For Jesus, morality is not limited to action, but instead involves cultivation of virtue and cultivation of character, such that someone is morally good and not just one who is doing moral things. So when the heart is changed and virtue changes and the character changes to being in line with the Scripture, then we're actually showing moral goodness. But someone doesn't need to be morally good to follow a rule. Someone could be as evil and sinful and in darkness, and as you can even imagine, they can be completely dark and go out and follow a rule. But their heart is completely dark. In the Old Testament, Israel is commanded not only to follow commands, that's the Mosaic law of God, but also to live a life of wisdom. And we see that in the wisdom literature. So it's about, obviously following the law in the Old Testament, following the law of Moses, But the heart change comes from, let's say, wisdom literature. In the ancient Near East, wisdom went beyond the abstract manifestation of character through everyday dealings of life. Now we're going to move on to proper moral assessment. Well, it's kind of switching gears here for us, but it shows how we can look at morality and kind of assess morality and be able to see it kind of in play. It concerns 4 parts, and they're highlighted in green there on your screen. It's the action, the motive, the consequences, and the character. So when you look at a moral situation and you have to assess it, first off, you see the action. This is seen, but only reveals behavior. That's all you see. You see a behavior of somebody. You see the behavior of the little boy taking the truck. You see an action. Then we look at the motive. Many times it is the motive that informs the goodness of the action. So example again, the little boy takes the truck. Well, what is the motive behind it? Well, the motive is he wants the truck and doesn't want the other boy to have the truck. So it shows the goodness of the action. Was it good or was it not good? Clearly, in that situation, that example, it was not good. He went and stole the truck, causing the dissension between the 2 toddlers. But just because one has good intentions in an action does not mean it is a good action. Let me give you another example. It's good that you want to feed your children. So how do you get food for your child? You can go to the store and buy the food, or you can go to the store and steal the food. Now, if you go to the store and steal the food and feed it to your child, the good intention is there, you want to feed your child. But the action of stealing the food is not good. So just because you want to do a good intention of feeding your child, the action behind it is not good. So we got to pay attention to motive. The motive is what informs the goodness of action. Then we see the consequence. This is the effects weighing in on the moral goodness. Was it a good motive behind it? So again, back to the little toddler stealing the truck. So what is the consequence? Well, the consequence for that little child will be the nursery worker taking the boy aside, removing the truck and giving it back to the first child, and then whatever the decision is by the nursery worker, whether it be discipline or he has to sit out or go get the parent or whatever it may be, there's a consequence. Well, was the consequence good for that child? Obviously not, because they were removed from the situation, maybe have to go get the parents involved, and it shows that that decision was not morally good to take that truck. So then we see the character. The character is the actual agent. It's showing that it can provide insight into the assessment, but this must be done with caution because, again, like I said, someone can be have a very poor character, but can put off or show that they are doing something morally right, even though their character is very poor. So, for example, if a person is known to be a card cheat, maybe they cheat at cards all the time in a card game or whatever, they're cheating all the time and they're known as a cheat, they can go do something good, but whenever someone says their name, well, they're always looked at as a cheat. So you have to be careful with the character of the person. But this is the 4 steps for moral assessment. There's going to be an action that reveals behavior, motive that shows the goodness of the action or not goodness, the consequence, what is the consequence of the decision of that action that is being made, and then we have the character of the person. So what is so good about being good? Being a good person is necessary to living a good life, and living a good life is necessary to create a good society. Those are the kind of like it's kind of like the step downs of what it means. Being a good person, you're living a good life. And then if you're living a good life, you should be a good, productive member of society, so it's a good society. See, if everybody did this, then we wouldn't have a problem in society because everybody would be doing good actions. Unfortunately, because of sin, people are always against each other, trying to promote themselves over others. They don't make good decisions, so they have bad actions, which means it's not going to have good consequences for their life. And then if it's out in society, these decisions are being made, it's going to be a problem in society, so things really start to fall apart. But the point of our course here is how do we make good biblical ethical decisions so we are a good person, that where we can have a good life and live in society and promote the biblical values and promote Christianity really within society. As Christians, we must remember that creation was orchestrated with a moral nature because it is created by a moral God. God is a moral God. He is the moral center. He is the one that dictates what is right and dictates what is wrong. And so with this, the law is the moral foundation, but it is also the minimum. Like I said, it's the minimum. We go beyond the just following the rules. We go beyond that to kind of like thou ought to be. What is our heart supposed to be like? What is our heart center? What is our moral center as Christians based on the morality of God? Okay, so why does morality matter? The textbook has a reference there for the myth or ring of Gyges. And you can look at that in the textbook. There's actually a extra credit if you want to do an extra credit in Moodle. That way you can have a better score on your lowest quiz grade. But it's called the myth or ring of Gyges. And really it's looking at why does morality matter. That assignment there, or in the textbook, deals with basically if you could do whatever you want and get away with it, would you? That's basically what it is. Morality matters because, and we got 3 bullet points there, it is at the core of life's questions. So basically, what is a good life? It is critical in solving the complexities of life in society. So how does man survive and flourish in community? And then one makes daily moral choices. That's why morality matters. And again, we're coming from a Christian worldview. So what is a good life for the Christian? It is critical there then, so how does a Christian survive and flourish in community? And then we make daily moral choices with a biblical worldview. Morality is important to consider because humans and societal flourishing require that individuals be moral creatures. We're moral creatures, and it's important for us to understand that, and it shows how we can interact with humans and society can flourish then. Okay, so how is it that we can interact in our society? Well, the reason that we interact in our society the way we do is because of our worldview. Now, of course, everybody has a worldview. Hopefully for the Christian, it's a biblical worldview, and you're looking through the world through the lens of the Scripture. But not everyone has that worldview. The majority of people in the world do not have that worldview. They have another worldview. For the most part, the worldview today is the postmodern worldview, where somebody can basically go out there and say, I can make up my own truth. There is no absolute truth, so I can make up my own truth. And that's getting just crazy today. And we'll be talking about some of that stuff and some of the dilemmas coming up. The answers to the core questions of life, meaning what is a good life, are rooted in one's worldview. And so we have a definition there. A worldview is the lens used by one to perceive and interpret the world. And we have a couple of little areas underneath of this. So how is the world looked at and interpreted? That's what a worldview is. Well, metaphysically, people need to be like, what is reality? What is reality? What is the truth and facts of reality? There's some false beliefs out there, such as Christian Science, that the world that we live in is not the real world. It's just an illusion. That's why they don't believe in medicines and all of that in regards to Christian Science. This table is not a real table. It's just an image of a table, and then the goal is to escape this world to the real world. That is what Christian Science believes. What is reality? Epistemology is what can I know about reality? And then anthropology, how does a human function based on what is real and what he can know about what is real? So what is reality? The reality is I'm sitting at a table right now, and it is a real table. Well, what can I know about that reality? Well, the table is hard. It's made of wood. It's brown. We see that there are these real characteristics to the table. And then how does one function based on what is real and what we know about what is real? So me sitting at this desk, I know it's real, I know it's hard, I know it will support weight, and so I have my computer on it, I have my Bible on it, I have my book on it, and I am functioning by sitting at this table and recording this video so we can know what is real. Now, that's just a very simple explanation. But go to a different explanation. What is a problem with reality today is that we know that there is man and woman, male and female. God created them, male and female. XX chromosome, XY chromosome. We know the DNA structure of a man and a woman. That is reality. But the big push today, for example, as I'm speaking, is transgenderism. And they have taken reality and have twisted it to what is not real. A man is not a woman, yet our culture says a man can be a woman. A man can change their appearance, can change their quote-unquote identity, and say that they are a woman now. So you can see how it can be very convoluted in our society and in our culture because of sin, and things start changing, and that's why there's ethical dilemmas in our culture today. So we'll definitely be talking a lot about that stuff coming up. Terms and distinctions in ethics. One must consider the authority of one's moral reasoning. For a Christian, that is God. It's the character of God. That is our authority for moral reasoning. But our world doesn't follow God. So where did they get their authority from for their moral reasoning? So we must consider the authority. For the Christian, it's God. Secondly, we need to look at objective and subjective views of morality. And then third, moral realism. Moral realism is moral values and facts exist. Moral values and facts are objective, and morals and facts can be known. So like I said, with the example of, let's say, transgenderism, the objective and subjective views of a morality. Well, with a biblical worldview, it's objective. It doesn't change. It would be a God's made man and woman, and that's the way it is. But for our world, or those that accept transgenderism, they are subjective, and they basically are saying that we can change these views of morality. At one time, any kind of transgenderism was against the laws of our culture or of our society. It was taboo. But then things changed over time, and our culture took a subjective view of that morality. Transgenderism is being more and more accepted in our culture, so it's a more subjective view of morality. Then we get to moral realism. Moral values and facts exist, so there is a standard out there, and the dilemma comes up where, because of the subjective view clashes with the objective view. So moral values and facts are objective, and then moral facts and values and facts can be known. You can see it. You can gauge it. You can take surveys. You can say, oh, this percentage of people are open to this moral standard, or whatever it may be. You can see the evidence or the data. It can be known. So that is moral realism. Now we do need to get into some definitions. Morality and ethics. Okay, so here's the definition on the screen. And you will need to know these for quizzes and for the exam and all of that. Morality is the content of right and wrong. So what is right and what is wrong? It's the content of it. It's the morals. It's the what is right and wrong. The ethics is the process of arriving at a moral conclusion. So when we have an ethical dilemma, there's a process of arriving to some sort of conclusion of it. And that will show the morality of it. That's the moral conclusion. So morality is the content, and ethics is the process of arriving at a moral conclusion. Specific attention will be given to, like I said, those green highlighted areas earlier in this PowerPoint: action, motives, consequences, and character of behavior. There are four main categories that are associated with the broad heading of ethics. There's descriptive ethics, number one. That's the study of morals of a society by comparing to other societies. And that's kind of like field studies. So, for example, in our society, it is wrong to cannibalize. It's wrong to eat somebody else. But in another society, that might be okay. I know that's a kind of a silly example, but that's what it means. It's comparing one society to another. So there's descriptive ethics. It's ethically wrong there, but it's ethically okay in another society. Number two are normative ethics. This is a system of ethics that tells what is normative for a group of people. That's going to be our primary approach for this class. What is the norm for a group of people? What is accepted in that group for that group of people? Then there's meta-ethics. That's an approach to ethics through an evaluation of terms and definitions. Example, right and wrong, to do good or not good. Okay, so basically that's more of a term definition idea. This is right, that is wrong. This is right, that is wrong. And really, because culture changes all the time, metaethics would basically mean terms and definitions have to change all the time. And then we have number 4, aretaic ethics, which are virtue-based ethics. Okay, so now we're going to look at the ethical systems on the base level. There's cognitive and non-cognitive areas that come up in ethical systems. Cognitive means you acquire knowledge through thought, experiences, or senses. That means moral statements are based on normative ethical systems. So you're in a society, you're in a culture, there's thought, there's experiences, there's senses, you're experiencing culture through your senses, what you see, what you hear, all of that. And then moral statements are based on the norms, the normative ethical systems that are in that society, which are based on action or on virtue. Okay, so just follow along with me here. Basically what it means is you would come down to a cognitive adherent would say adultery is wrong. There's a moral statement based on norms in our ethical system, in our culture. Adultery is wrong. So when if you watch a TV show and someone is committing adultery in that TV show, someone at the workplace is cheating on their wife with somebody else, the overall belief or the overall norm there is that it is wrong. It is wrong that they're cheating on their wife. And for the most part, the culture would say that is wrong. It's based on an action and it's based on virtue. It's not virtuous to cheat on your wife. So the cognitive adherent would say adultery is wrong. Compared to the non-cognitive adherent, where they would basically say a moral statement is either not true or not false, such as adultery is wrong. They wouldn't say that. They would basically say something more of like, I disapprove of adultery. So they wouldn't look at the statement as some sort of normative ethical system. They would look at it as, do I basically approve or disapprove of it? Okay, so that's non-cognitive. But we're not going to focus on that for this class. We're going to be focusing on the cognitive. That's why it's highlighted in yellow. So the ethical system, base level, cognitive. Then we go a little deeper. So you see up here it says at the top of the screen, cognitive. So that's our focus. Normative ethical systems are cognitive. Ethical systems can be divided then into 2 categories known as action-oriented systems or virtue-based systems. Under action-oriented systems, there are 3 subdivisions by which ethical systems can be classified: deontological, teleological, or relativism. Okay, so we're just kind of breaking this down where ethical system is cognitive, and then we're going to go under action-oriented. Okay, so we're breaking it down: cognitive, action-oriented. Under action-oriented systems, there are 3 subdivisions by which ethical systems may be classified. There's deontological, which means principles determine an action is right or wrong. This is used in Christian ethics by viewing the laws and commands of God. So deontological, we can determine an action is right or wrong based on the law or the command of God. God says, thou shalt not kill. So if someone goes and murders somebody, well, that's breaking God's law, so that is wrong. That's for the Christian. Teleological is based on the goal or the end result of the action. In teleological, this basically means that no decision is actually inherently wrong. If the result is harmful or not desired, then it is wrong. Or vice versa, if the result is beneficial, the decision was right. So that's teleological. It's not really what the decision is. It's more that what is the result? Is the result good? Well, then it was a good decision. It was a moral decision. Is the result bad? Then it is a bad decision. The number 3 is relativism. This is based on no decision is right or wrong outside the context of the culture of even personal preference. So basically what that means is cultural relativism is right or wrong changes from culture to culture. There is no transcendent standard to judge. And then moral subjectivism is right and wrong is determined by the individual, not a culture. So you can see how it can really start getting out of control. Under relativism, there's no right or wrong. It's only based on, does the culture say it's right or wrong? Then it can even be further than that. does the person in the culture say it's more right or wrong? So you can see how under cognitive, action-oriented ethical systems, it can start really branching out. And so for the Christian, we want to be focused on number one, deontological. Principles determine an action is right or wrong based on the commands, the laws, the character of God. But then teleological and relativism, that comes into play in our culture also, because people will make decisions and say, well, it really wasn't the decision that was wrong. Is it a good result in the end or a bad result? That's what makes it moral. And then relativism is just basically there's no right and wrong. It's up to the culture to decide that. There's no standard or judge for it. Or moral subjectivism is right and wrong is determined by the individual. It's basically each individual can say what is right and wrong. So this is what all comes into play in the ethical system that we will be looking at in our class this semester. Okay, so that is session number one. I know it was a lot. I know it's a lot to digest for the first. We need to get a basis on how to look at morality and why morality matters. I'll see you in a second. Okay, class, that is it for today. Next time we'll look at Why Morality Matters Part 2, and that's just a brief PowerPoint basically on morality and the law. We'll see you then.